Congratulations on your anniversary.
Couldn't have done it without Lisa. Needed her here.
Okay.
I think it's the other way around. Lisa couldn't have done it without you.
Yeah. And I was going to say congratulations on having a wonderful daughter. So that too.
We love her.
Have a good weekend.
Either yesterday or the day before was their 75th wedding anniversary.
Wow, amazing, wonderful. Congrats. Congratulations. Looks like we're live. So let's make sure everybody who we have here. Councilman Ince.
Here.
Councilman McEwen.
Here.
Councilwoman Fillmore.
Here.
Councilwoman Ivy.
Here.
And Councilwoman Meekum.
Here.
Thank you. It looks like all 5 of City Council is here. So the reason that this meeting was called was the business of the meeting is to go over an air parade agreement. There's been many things taking place today, and I want to report on some of them, but I also want to give you details of what's been going on. Councilman Ince brought this up at our last city council meeting of what was going on with this. Since that time, I believe it was the day after, the county talked with me at about, yeah, it was the day after. I just want to make sure I have my dates right. Yeah, so it was on the 17th, and our last council meeting was the 16th. So one of the county commissioners talked with me about 9 in the morning, and he brought up with me, says, we like this idea. We would like to promote this with our through our tourism board. And let me get back with you and all the other mayors later tonight at a COG meeting that we had. So that was about 9 hours before we had our COG meeting. That commissioner came to the COG meeting, and at the end of the COG meeting announced, Yahoo, we got funding. The county tourism is going to pay the whole $15,000. Originally, it was going to be $1,000 from each city and then $3,000 from the county. So all the mayors got all excited, and a couple of them said, Wilkinson, you owe me some money back. And so we had collected some money from them. We sent it all back. So the county, I assume that everything was taken care of on the county's end, that this commissioner had talked with the Tourism Bureau, the disbursement of the checks, their finance department, their legal department, everything else. And that was all in place. They'd done their due diligence. Well, come to find out in the last couple of days that there maybe wasn't as good a communication as I thought that there would have been. And so now we've been scrambling the last couple of days to try and get this all put together. We had out of the goodness of their heart, a private vendor, Flight Academy LLC, who was willing to have funds run through them. Councilman Ince has worked hard on finding an insurance policy, which it needs to be funded by 1 tomorrow to get the insurance policy in place. That it has the coverage that the city's desired and also that the county desired. But the county was also looking to have this agreement that you see here in front of you. Unfortunately, as Councilman Ince and I have worked on it, I think I've had about a half hour in of other things today besides this. That's about it. As we've worked on it all day, the private provider, and they're doing it out of their goodness, their heart, they feel the documents a little too strict for them, that they're having to take all liability upon themselves with the hold harmless and the indemnification. Their attorney spoke with the other attorneys involved. Lisa was one of them. and they were not able to come up with a compromise. So the FLT Academy does not want to sign that. In the meantime, I was getting a hold of the county and saying, "Hey, the city's kind of backed off, says you, because you're going to take it all over." And I got a hold of all three of the different commissioners, and they're kind of pulling back and saying, "Well, legals doesn't have what they need, so we're pulling back." So we are left up in the air right now with no funding on this. I reached out to each of the cities, and they're willing to go again with $1,000 a piece to make this happen. We need a vehicle that we can run the money through to be able to disperse it. We've reached back out to that FLT Academy, and they're not too sure about doing it. And we would get a insurance policy as well in place as well too. Unfortunately, it eliminates some of the functions such as the skydivers. I'm getting texts right and left, and maybe Councilman Inces as well too, from people that are on this committee. And the skydivers, I guess, have cleared with the FAA, and they're all ready to go. They're excited about it. They have their smoke, they have their flags, but we're sitting here without funding mechanisms. Very disappointed, to say the least, in the county. I'm trying to keep this calm, but at the same time, and factual. I don't want to have anything not be correctly factual, and so that is where we're at. So presently, this agreement, there's really no purpose for it right now because the FLT Academy is not wanting to sign it. And so we are scrambling to try and have something. Presently, it was, hey, let's drop the skydivers, even though they've worked hard on it and are ready to go, and just have the cities put in money. We would get this insurance policy in place. Each city would be putting in $1,000. Bill, what have I missed? Anything else that I need to complete the story?
No, I think you've pretty well completed the story. We could provide a lot more details. The latest is that FLT is reconsidering doing it with just the cities, no skydivers, without the county support, which was at 15,000. We don't have the money to pay for the skydivers and the insurance. We could do everything else, and that's one alternative. FLT is hesitant, not because of the liability, at least in my opinion. They're saying when this started, we were getting some advertising benefit out of it, but it's gone so long that at this late date, we're not going to get anything out of this. And since you guys are so afraid of the liabilities, maybe there's more there than we see. We're not sure we're willing to step back in a modified situation. They're going to think about it overnight, talk to the attorney, get back to us first thing in the morning. But if first thing isn't really first thing, we'll use half of the remaining business hours to get something done. So
unfortunately, because of the county's commitment, obviously, and we held back on this until just yesterday. All sorts of advertising has gone out. I've heard from one source that sent it out on a Facebook page that 87 people have responded throughout the county. People are thrilled about it. People are in tears because there's something that's going to be done. And of course, we didn't expect this to happen. I guess we took some people at their word and thought they would come through on their word. And so we got a lot of people expecting this to happen. We would like to have something happen, even if it's a scaled down approach. I've got having people, that's why what my picture wasn't up at first, because people texting me right and left saying that maybe we can get corporate donors, or we can get 15 corporate donors giving $1,000. I said, go for it, see if you can pull it off in the next day or two. I mean, I'm doing everything I can. And so that's where it's at. So we wanted to still have this meeting. I talked to Brent about 6, and I said, as far as this agreement, there's no reason to get council discussion or approval on this agreement, because as it stands, it doesn't want to be signed by the FLT Academy. So, but Brad and I talked, we said, well, let's still inform the council of what the status is and what is going on. I know me, I'll continue to work it as long as I can to try and because I know how bad that people want it. I'm trying to do it prudently. Bill went and got that event policy when people said it was not possible to do in that amount of time, and he's done it. He got a quote actually last Friday on it. So I mean, it just seems like it was falling in place, and then all of a sudden this has happened. The rug's been pulled out as far as the funding goes, and so we need funding. We need some money from it. We have it from the cities, like I say, but it's collecting that money into one place. We're hoping to do it through FLT Academy to pay out bills. We got to get that insurance policy in place, and it would mean cutting out the skydivers as well too. So, questions, suggestions, ideas, something magical that any of you might think can happen that satisfies all parties?
I'm very sad. I've talked to so many people that were so excited. I think we're going to have a lot of really disappointed people, and I'm very sad. There's been so much work put into it.
I'm curious how we handle the liability question with our fireworks shows, which also seems that there's some danger involved. Lisa, do you have an answer to that?
I'm not familiar with how we handle that. I'm assuming we contract with them, but under state law, they have to be, they're highly regulated. So I'm not familiar with those, but I would recommend the same thing, get into.
I would imagine that, I don't know that Brent or Lisa are going to have to tell me that that's covered just under our insurance through IRMA, but that doesn't require a special event policy.
Actually, if Lisa wants to chip in, historically, Lisa had encouraged Steve that he should be looking at special event coverage for the parade. And years of not doing it, didn't believe it was necessary, didn't like the cost. We basically looked the other way. And
so this is a question that Kim Curnow can possibly answer for us, Council. Sorry to interrupt you, Councilman Brent, but
that's fine.
But we do, I believe we do have, and she's on the call, we do have a contract, and they are required to carry so much insurance. So again, we're indemnified to a point through their insurance. But maybe Kim can answer a little bit more about how that works. I do believe, if I recall, we discussed special event insurance last year. But that seems like it was 10 years ago at this point.
Was there such a year as 2019? I guess my general question and thought would be, well, this is substituting our normal celebration. And our normal celebration is usually paid directly from the city coffers. Is that correct? And there's a certain amount of risk involved in those activities. And I don't know how they're normally covered, if we're looking the other way or if there is coverage. It seems to me that if a professional organization comes in and is providing their service or their show, it would be assumed that they have their own coverage. That's what I would assume. And just because we're hiring them, they should be a licensed company, and licensing includes being insured adequately. So I'm confused as to why this whole question would even exist. If this is a licensed company that does this sort of thing, then isn't it a given that adequate insurance coverage exists? And then the other question that I have is, if in our minds we're saying we're trying to replace our normal celebration, and what would be the issues with paying a little more? It's still a fraction of what we would be spending on fireworks and whatever else. And what would the issues be with if we're hosting it, saying Centreville City is willing to host this and have the money get funneled through the community foundation and the bills paid that way? Or any of those things possibilities?
So Tammy, to your first point about are they insured and do they have the right licensure? We've never done an air parade. So we're assuming, and I'm making a general statement, Clarkville, you fill in the gaps. If we have everyone listed on the insurance policy, that's one. And then as far as vetting their insurance, I mean, I've looked at a couple of the players. They do commercial exhibitions, so they're likely to be licensed correctly. I do know with fireworks that you do have to maintain a state license in order to provide that. So I think there's some merit to that. As far as the paying a little extra, what do you mean? Like trying to figure out how we're picking up the rest of the 15,000?
Mm-hmm. If we've got the city's contribution, we need 3,000 more. In my mind, as a Centreville City Council member, I would say I wouldn't mind paying a little more than 1,000, because this is replacing, say, our fireworks show, which is a lot more expensive than this. I wouldn't even mind as our city to pay the additional money that's needed. Once again, our 4th of July celebration as a whole costs a lot more than this, and this is the one thing that we're able to provide. So as far as being willing to pay more to help make this happen, I'd be a yes. And then my question is, what are the complications and the reasons that we can't say we're being the hosts of this, and so we'll funnel the money in and be that funding mechanism? Because if it's like the fireworks show, we're just paying as a licensed company to take on their own liability to provide us something that has inherent risk. We do it every year, right?
Yep.
So Lisa and I could both probably chime in. I'll share my thoughts, and then Lisa will go really technical. But the initial thoughts are, this is not just replacing fireworks. This is far more riskier than what before. There's inherent risk in all things that we do, but we try to mitigate that risk. We're talking about a multi-jurisdictional type of event here. It doesn't stay within Centreville boundaries. It doesn't. It includes a lot more parties, and we don't have any interlocal agreements that protects each other, right? So if an incident occurs, the concern would be, as we just found out last week with the plane crash, that there are risks involved, and the costs behind those risks are great. And as we found out, is the pilot doesn't carry insurance. The organization that flies, and Councilmember McKeon, you correct me if I'm wrong, the organization that they fly with does carry insurance, but where does that play into this? So there are risks involved, and so what we're trying to do is mitigate those risks. It's nothing to do with just fireworks and a parade. where we can control some more of those risks. We're talking about 12 entities, 13 entities involved. So there are some serious concerns on what that looks like. And if an incident does occur, and we're not even talking worst case scenario, we're even concerned about a minor incident. We have insurance, but I've seen insurance. We've had insurance for things in the past where the insurance company will say, that's not our problem. That's outside of our coverage. So that's on us. So we don't know what this insurance covers. Well, we do. Councilor Rins sent that, and we're able to see some of those proposals. So we feel more comfortable with the amount of the insurance. And personally, my feeling is I have no problem spending more money to make sure we have more insurance. That is not the concern from us. The concern would be ensuring that we are not the only payers in this. If we are paying the bulk of it and there's an incident that occurs in Bountiful, we're going to be taking that hit, and we may be responsible or liable for that. So we need to make sure, if we can make sure all entities are involved, then we share the wealth and share the blame amongst 12 entities, 13 entities, including the counties. That's what we're looking for. And I'll hand it off to Lisa to handle a little bit more of the technical side.
So to rebuttal, not rebuttal, but response to what Brett said before Lisa talks. Number one, yes, it's unfortunate that the accident happened last week, and there's people that died from it that were known, and it's a bad loss. That was, in effect, almost a homemade plane, not commercial pilots. So we've done our best to make sure that we have organizations that do this stuff on a regular basis, and they carry insurance as well too. Number two, the policy that needs to be paid for by 1 tomorrow does cover as insured all 12 of the cities, and Brent did mention that. So all 12 would be covered on it. The quote that we received so far was up to 5 million liability. Most cities were asking for 3 million. Councilman Entz went out for a policy up to 10 million. I don't know the exact amount on that, but
We haven't gotten it.
yeah. So I know for the 5 million policy, they need to get a check for around $4,200 tomorrow.
Mayor, before Lisa jumps in, to not rebuttal your response, but to respond, Jason was a certified flight instructor and a commercial pilot.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
He has to hold that rating to fly AirMed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I guess
Little different type of airplane, but
yeah.
But thanks for clarifying that.
So Bountiful Flight LLC does train people to fly planes and become pilots, but they don't do air parades. So that's their concern. That was their attorney's main concern is, hey, we don't do air parades. We're not even sure this is in our scope of business. And so, that was what they were looking at as well, is do we really want to take on this risk and expand what we're doing to provide entertainment? And I guess just from my perspective, I was trying to be part of the solution. I know that, a lot of people think attorneys get in the way of productive things, but the way that I thought it would be safe is for Bountiful Flight to get the insurance, which was the proposal, and to indemnify the city. And, I understand that the agreement was strict, but sometimes that's what happens when you put something in writing. It shows people this is the risk that you're taking, and this is what we're asking you to do. We're asking you to get $5 million worth of insurance and to indemnify the city. So I'm just saying, from my professional advice, that's what I'm advising you was the best course of action under the circumstances. Could we have done it a different way, perhaps with some interlocals with the other cities? But, obviously it's up to the council to take the risk. I just don't see Centreville having the funds to take on this kind of risk. But that's your decision.
So what's insurance for? When you get insurance and you have 12 people on the 12 different entities on the insurance?
Sure. Well, and that's why I recommend having an agreement because the question is, what is the insurance? What are you insured for? You're named as an additional insured, but being an additional insured is slightly different than being the named insured. The named insured has 100% of coverage. An additional insured only has whatever the contract says. So are we sure what we're being named as the additional insured? Do we have the 5 million? What is it for? Is it for people on the ground? Is it for people flying, you know, jumping out of the planes? There's just a lot of questions when it comes to insurance. And believe me, if there's a $5 million claim, the insurance is going to say, oh yeah, we don't think this is covered. So that's why I'm saying Centreville needs to have some sort of cushion to even get out of a lawsuit.
That's where I am very disappointed. There's about 2 or 3 people involved in this that's shutting this whole thing down because we got caught up about a contract and not really seeing if the insurance was covering. I don't know that anybody at the county in the legal department looked at the insurance policy.
You guys provided to them? I mean, in all fairness, attorneys, what I'm hearing is I'm hearing 3 different attorneys all said don't take on risk. That sounds like what attorneys are supposed to do. So I'm not sure that that's necessarily a fair judgment against attorneys in general. The county didn't take this on.
I know they didn't look at the insurance policy.
Did we not give it to them? Why didn't they look at it?
They got caught up with the indemnification agreement that you have in front of you.
Well, I don't know whether the county looked at it or not. I know we did send it to Irma, and Dave Peterson said, yeah, that's the type of coverage you need, and you know, the limits. So we were told it was adequate, but I can't say that again, I think the best way to make sure that you're covered by someone else's insurance policy is to have a contract in place that says, if something goes wrong, you're going to cover us. That's the contract.
I want to be clear that I don't have a problem with the contract. So in the questions that I asked, I wasn't suggesting we shouldn't have a contract in place. I just heard
my problem and my issue, as I've told Lisa with the contract, is it seems to me that there should be some difference between the kind of indemnification that we require when we put out a $500,000 street paving contract to a contractor who has come to us and bid for it and is getting paid $500,000, and a company that we approach to help us solve a problem who is basically doing it on a cover his costs basis, no income, no net income, and is willing to help us get it done and get the insurance that through the county we've been told is not available for, on one occasion we were told 60 days, and on another occasion we were told we could get it by July 24th, which would have been about 3 weeks. So I just had, one of the comments Lisa has made is, well, there has to be a document that says we get to collect on the insurance policy. Now, I've never been in that kind of an insurance lawsuit. But when we are a named insured, and when it's clearly part of the activity that's been documented, I have a hard time with, and I had told her when I first saw the agreement before I presented it to him, I mean, it's pretty expansive, and essentially anything that happens on the 4th of July is his fault. And to me, that's just going too far. So,
Councilman Brandt, I would like to respond. I agree. I mean, the agreement is one-sided, but that's the point of agreements. Is we draft the agreement, we have negotiations, they point out issues that they have with the agreement, and we negotiate. We don't have that time to negotiate and find out what those sticking points are. The problem I'm not quite sure Flight Academy solved the entire problem. If the problem is the liability, and shifting the liability to another organization that is willing to take on that liability, that is the problem. And if Flight Academy is saying, look, we'll help out, but we're not really shifting responsibility to them, we're just going through a conduit, but we're still ultimately responsible as Centreville if we were to take the money. I know that's off the table. I know that was a conversation, though. If we were to send the money to them, we have contracted with them, and that's similar to the street paving project. We have a contract with that contractor, and we have expectations in those agreements and understanding. So if there's any breach, we can go to court and we're protected. In this case, we don't have an agreement, and if there is any issues amongst the organizations, because I'll tell you right now that if something happens in a neighboring city, I won't say who, and even if they are listed co-insured and there's an issue financially, they'll be pointing the finger at Centreville saying, you organized this, you're gonna deal with it. I'll tell you that's already been shared with me. So the issue, even if they're listed co-insured, but if there is an issue financially that goes beyond the insurance, we don't have an interlocal agreement with 13 entities, including us, saying, look, if there's an issue in your city, it's your responsibility. We don't have that. So the concern is with how much involvement we've had, and that's been shared by our insurance, by Dave Peterson, that the more involved we are, the more risk we take. And we've been heavily involved in Centreville. Flight Academy, the hope was to have this agreement to shift some of that liability, if not all. And yes, it was definitely one-sided, but that's the whole point of agreements. We negotiate those terms, and we don't have time to negotiate those terms.
So why don't we
Lisa,
have
correct me if
time
I'm
to
wrong in
say,
any of that.
sorry.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
It seems to me we want to have this done. We want to find a way to make it work. So let's try to write an agreement that doesn't take the back and forth and back and forth. I mean, that's the no-brainer to me.
Well,
If you know that what we've written is more strict than they're ever going to agree to, why do we write it that way? Aren't we trying to hurry so that we can accomplish something amazing? I don't understand that part.
So to go on Bill's point about there is no upside, they're doing it. I mean, even a straw purchaser wants to have some upside. If there's no upside, then why even attempt to run it through him? But if you run it directly,
Because he was a good corporate citizen.
well, no, I get that part, but I'm saying basically what we were doing is we're extending a straw man purchase through to another group to basically buy an insurance policy for us and slide that liability over. And since it is a straw purchase that has no upside, naturally their attorney, if they're doing their job, is going to say, no, there's no upside. You are making no money on this. You are taking on risk that has no benefit for you. The problem I see is we're still in the same boat. Is if we say Flight Academy's out, we just bought the policy directly ourselves, we have the same issue, which is the county has backed out of its liability as well as the other entities. So the difference to me, and Tammy, you were saying, well, what about the fireworks? To me, a key difference is the fireworks take place in our town. They don't extend to the county. Sure, people come in from other parts of the county or from Bountiful, but it stays inside our town. The minute we start literally flying tons of metal over somebody else's town, it's always been the same problem. Chances of something going to happen, really low. I mean, somebody asked me last week, would you still fly after what happened in Centreville? I said, absolutely. But I think we need to look at it very pragmatically as our stewardship does not extend to the entire county. If we are providing a service, it's for the citizens of Centreville, and our risk should end at our borders. That's to me the biggest problem. And if the county, and this is the part I'm still not sure on, and Bill and Mayor, if you could throw some more in, what they backed away from, because what is it that they're trying to tell, or the commissioners were told by their staff that we're not hearing or taking a different direction? Because that seems to be a pretty key point for me. Because if this was all things being equal, we should be able to just send all the money to the county and they run with it for all the entities. That's kind of why you have a county organization, right? They're in the next hierarchy up of government.
The other entities, and I assume when you refer to other entities, Councilman McEwen, that you're saying backed out, or other cities. Other cities have not backed out.
Why did the county back out?
County backed out because the attorneys were, and I'm not trying to throw you under the bus, Lisa, but Lisa wrote the indemnification agreement. The county attorney looked at it and said, looks beautiful to me. And we will not do this without the indemnification agreement. We don't care how much insurance there is.
So
And initially, Bob, the commissioners at least seemed to be wiggling that they would maybe not listen to the attorneys all the way. But at the end of the day, today they've said no, the attorneys have said no, and so they're out.
So if I can interject and add to this a little bit, I think what we'd like to see in this whole thing is an interlocal agreement amongst all the cities and the county that agrees that we'll share in the responsibility and liability. We contract with Flight Academy to provide the service jointly. This is optimal. We have insurance that covers $10 million, $5 million, whatever that extra cost is, I think is worth it. If each city had to pitch in an extra 500 to 1,000 to have that insurance, hands down, easy, let's pay it. What would then also we would need is each city to pay their portion. So Flight Academy, we're contracting with them, they would invoice each entity, all 13 entities, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, whatever the cost is to cover the cost. And I don't even care if Flight Academy makes money off it, so it probably should. For $5,000, still minimal cost that we're talking about overall compared to what we would spend on a 4th of July committee. Short of having, and then co-insured, having understanding what the insurance requirements are, being named additional insured to ensure that we are covered, that if any incident occurs, minor, major, or in between, we're covered. We just don't have time to negotiate with 13 attorneys to figure out what that agreement looks like and negotiating who's comfortable with what, because we're all on a different scale of what we're comfortable with. Some cities I know are, hey, let's do it. We don't know what liability is and we're okay with it. It's going to be fun. And then you have 3 or 4 cities, including us, well, from staff perspective, who have some concerns about what that looks like. So everything in between. So short of having an interlocal agreement, I think for a minimum, and Lisa, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you know, if you disagree, at a minimum, having all cities listed as additional insured or co-insured, understanding what those conditions are, and each city being named, so we're collectively understood. So if there's any incident, if there's a lawsuit that comes our way, what the attorneys will look for is saying who's listed on the certificate and who's listed on this insurance. All the entities are, so they're pursuing all entities. If it's just Davis County and Centreville, they'll look at Davis County and Centreville, because that was conversation 3 days ago, which for Councilmember Ince is a lifetime ago. Based, you know, for this, there's been a lot happening, a lot movement. So having all 13 entities listed, great. That helps and shows that we're all in this together. SLT Academy, Flight Academy, then invoices each individual city, whatever that cost is. Then they're actually worried about what happens in their borders or in their boundaries, and they essentially are co-sponsoring or co-hosting this event using Flight Academy as the contractor. That I think is a minimum, and I think that can still happen. We're not going to hit optimal. We're just not. I think I've been trying to work with Mayor and Councilmember Ince. I think this is a great idea, and we need to find a way. But Lisa and I are kind of screaming inside a little bit, if I could speak for Lisa, that we just want to make sure we're mitigating as much as we possibly can. Is that
you
fair?
think there's still a possibility that an interlocal agreement could come about before the 4th?
You're talking about having each city schedule a special work session in the next 2 days. That would be Friday, unless they're going to meet at 9 o'clock at night to get together to. But you're talking about Lisa coordinating with all the other attorneys and me,
Right.
maybe with the other city managers.
Right. So
that's not happening.
Has the idea been thrown out to make this a 24th of July celebration and still work towards the same end goal and what you described?
Fantastic idea. That's
Yeah, so it's been brought up. It's been brought up, and there was some hesitations to the 24th. Councilman Rentz has a good point that not everybody has that day off. Not everybody can enjoy whatever those festivities are. The flyover wouldn't be available. We don't have the flyover available anymore anyway, but I think those were fair points because you lose a couple of those entities. So 24th could be a thing, but
We
anyway.
do have one flyover that morning at 9:30.
Well, so the idea was kind of this is replacing our parade, but I'm assuming that Bountiful's not going to have their 6 p.m. 24th parade. And so it would be a evening thing in my mind.
Well, there's other cities that have parades too. Kaysville has a parade. Farmington has one like a week later. So there's other cities as well too that have parades. I mean, since we've been in this meeting, I've heard from 4 or 5 mayors wanting to get this done. I've also heard that, and Councilman Entz talked to him, but someone else talked to him as well too, that Jason's going to talk with his attorney in the morning. That's from the Flight Academy. I would just like to say, and Brant, you just said it as well too. He feels there's a way we can get this done. It may not be optimal, but the biggest thing I think we have to do is get the insurance in place by 1 o'clock tomorrow. So I've just been trying to find a way of where the money goes to be able to pay for that insurance.
Well, and I think, Mayor, to Brant's earlier point, and this has been made, and Bill said it too, if they're going to take on the risk, get them some upside. It's still less on a per city basis. If you can get that sort of agreement, that's fine. But there's no way I would run a private business, do something out of the goodness of my heart that could bankrupt me in mind. I would want if I'm going to take a risk, I'd want an upside. That's, I think, reasonable.
Only fair.
And I agree. You're so right, Councilman McEwen. And I said that to Councilman Entz today. I said, maybe they should be making some money on it. And I think everybody would be okay if they did.
But so Brant, you were saying that there is a way. So are you giving us hope that tomorrow morning there is a way we may be able to pull this all off? Or am I not?
And I think it's based on 2 conditions for me at that point, and that is making sure all 13 entities, including ourselves, are listed as co-insured, as well as SLT Academy agreeing to invoice each individual city for the cost.
What's the minimum documentation you need from them to, list them as co-insured? Because I could say I'm the sponsor and list all of you I see on my screen as co-insured. What does that do for me? Do I need an acknowledgement from you that you're agreeing to be co-insured?
Well, that's where Councilman Rentz and I have kind of looked into that, right, Councilman Rentz? And what does that mean? The one concern, I guess, is generally when you get co-insured, additionally insured, there's a cost per entity, $500 to list this city, and that includes you in the insurance. If we're not paying any added cost to add people, then that's concerning. And what does that actually mean? So it's getting in the nitty gritty of the document to find out what does it mean to be additionally insured. And that's what I haven't looked into to verify. And I don't know if that document was included, Councilman Rentz, in what you sent us on Monday.
The definition of what it took to be a co-insured was not included. No.
I didn't think so. So if we could find that out tomorrow, that would, and then we can review that with Dave. And if generally Dave is okay with the idea, I could say most insurance would be okay with it.
So with the commitment that they've agreed to be co-insured, the fact that they're making a payment to Centreville. So if it's, we'll call it $1,500 just to say your number of 500 per additional insured. So the city hands over $1,500 to Centreville or Flight Academy. That's indicating they agreed to be co-insured. Does that make sense?
Well, I think so. So Councilmember Entz sent an email out to everybody on the committee that's representing their respective cities. And Councilmember Entz, correct me if I'm wrong, at the time we spoke today, it was 10 out of 12.
10 out of 12, and to be honest, I lost, when things went underwater at about 3 o'clock, I lost focus and did not go look to see if the last two had responded.
Now, Flight Academy does have an upside in addition to maybe providing some profit on it. I just got a text come through from them that exposure, media, social media, TV, and so there's upside like that as well too. But I'm sure making a little money at it would be nice for them as well too.
Well, I don't think anyone's opposed to sweetening the deal for them a little bit to transfer that you know, or work out the insurance.
Yeah, and I've had 5 mayors in the last 30 minutes say that they'll go up to a couple thousand now to be able to have skydivers as well.
We should run this more like a telethon than a special meeting and put up the numbers to see where they're at. We can keep going until they hit the right number. Have we hit 23
That's a great
yet?
idea.
You'll get a free DVD if.
Exactly. You know, the one thing that I think has been interesting about this, and I've actually asked a bunch of friends, even in the aviation community, it's like, when have you ever seen an air parade? And the answer is, I don't think I have. I mean, I've seen formation flights that come into an air show, but not specifically an activity like this. And I think that's one of the things that's making it unique.
That is, if I can interrupt, and I think it was Tammy said something about, you know, that things have been done like this. No, we've come up with something that's as novel as the novel coronavirus.
Yeah, no, it's fantastically novel, and I know, Bill, you're tired, and Mayor, you're the same. You've been at this a lot. I want to make sure that all the procedural stuff I'm looking at and the risk mitigation isn't in any way trying to drag down the efforts that have been done. They've been phenomenal. Trying to do something that is novel as the novel coronavirus is pretty good. And when you get a bunch of aviation buffs sitting around going, yeah, I don't think I've ever seen something like that. That's pretty neat to have something original like that.
One of the curiosities is that I have heard from more than one party today that we should make this an annual thing. And I just shake my head and say, you don't have a clue.
Well, now you know what it is to herd 13 government stamped cats, right?
Yeah, that's how it's been.
So I'm getting more texts. Hundreds of people have responded. They are canceling trips to see it. We can go 2,000. So I guess my question is, if we can get an entity like Flight Academy to take the money through it, and we can get that insurance in place, and we can get right on in the morning and get copies out for Irma to see. That's the first thing we got to get paid. We can get some of the shows and the jumpers, that type of thing. They don't get paid till after the fact anyway, because just in case weather's bad, you know, and it doesn't happen. So is that acceptable? Can we move ahead doing something like that?
I say yes.
I'd say yes, but I'm biased. The question is can we get FLT back to the table? In my mind, it's 50-50. If we don't, is there any other alternative? Is there a way, I don't know, figure out, do you know where Bob Stevenson lives? And I'll go see Randy Elliott tonight and see if we can twist their arms.
Well, is the county out completely on, they're not going to fund anything?
Based on what the attorneys said, in absence of the agreement, yes.
Okay.
Well, in absence of the agreement, but the assumption for us also is that the agreement will be in place. We're just trying to sweeten the deal and give a little more incentive for that indemnification portion.
Well, and if all the cities will sign and we put the county on too, then would they be back? If that's relieving them of, you know, so they've only got a 15th of the responsibility. Would they be willing to come back in even with their money if we can, if all the cities will be listed on the insurance, then to me that looks like that's relieving a lot of their stress.
If we have to have the same indemnification agreement signed, I don't think we get it done.
But
Yeah,
do we,
I don't think
everybody signs it. Everybody signs for the insurance.
now, Bill.
Everybody signs for the insurance is a different story. But if the indemnification agreement in its current form has to be signed, I will try, but I do not see it happening. I have tried to explain that it's not that big of a deal. I've tried to see if we could put out some kind of a document that says all this is for is to make sure that we get our share of the insurance. If there's a problem, we're not going to pursue you beyond the insurance. And I'm told those things can't be done.
Grant, will you give us clarification again about what your requirements were to feel comfortable? And was that for insisting that the indemnification stay in place? Or is that insisting that the co-insured include all of the entities?
The indemnification, Lisa pops on, that's scary. Lisa's going to correct everything I say. So for me,
Get used to it. We all have to.
The indemnification agreement is, I think, done. I think it's too late to try and negotiate in terms of that. FLT Academy, again, the purpose of FLT Academy was to help alleviate some of the liability, if not all the liability. Again, that's unfair. I agree with Councilmember Branson and Mayor that it's unfair, but again, that was kind of the understanding of why that was a purpose, you know, why there was a purpose there. But what they do, having a private entity participate, is they can invoice each separate city, because we've contracted with them essentially to collect the monies and help sponsor this. Whereas before we had all the money coming to the city, to Centreville, and then we pay out the invoices. That's us sponsoring it. That's the problem. That was a huge problem. So if FLT Academy is willing to invoice each entity, the 13 entities separately, then we're all participating financially. We all have skin in the game, so to say. The agreement, I don't think, is a requirement for us to alleviate some of the risk. There is still risk out there that makes us nervous. But if we have all 13 cities participating financially, paying their $1,000 to FLT, we have every entity listed on the insurance, co-insured, additional insured, whatever we want to call it. I think that's the bare minimum. And Lisa can correct everything I just said.
I think FLT Academy is back. Just as long as they don't have to sign that agreement. Councilman Ince has talked to him, and I've had someone else talk to him as well too. If they can just be the funnel for the money, get the insurance in place. I think the insurance bill is somebody they know well that they use as their insurance contractor, correct? And knows the industry.
He is their primary. And they're not a small operation. They've got 48 planes in 4 different locations, including Southern California.
So then from the liability transfer standpoint, it sounds like if we get the Flight Academy to invoice the 13 entities, by default, that makes everyone a co-sponsor. Is that fair to say?
I'll let Lisa, if she wants to chime in and answer that.
Well, if you don't have anything in writing, who knows what it is? That's so, you know, I mean, I've given you my recommendation. If everybody wants to know what the rules of the game are, but if you want to go a different direction, I can't really, yeah, who knows? It's a handshake. That's what it is. It's a handshake with insurance.
But if we're going, if each city is going to agree to make a payment to FLT, can we just say, along with that payment, we would like you to sign this document that says we are equal co-sponsors in this project.
Well, let me ask this. Would you be okay if we received that document tomorrow and I didn't come to council and ask that and I signed it? Would you be okay with that as a council?
That's a good question.
Because that's kind of what you're asking other cities to do.
The only difference
I would
with
feel
that,
comfortable in that position, to be honest with you.
the only difference is that each of the other cities for approximately the last 3 weeks has had a representative in a meeting and is
We're already on
urging to get it done. Now, you're absolutely right, Brant. There are a couple of cities who have on occasion mentioned their concern about the liability, but there's 2 or 3 of them, not 12. So
There's been a couple. Oh, sorry, Bill.
no, that's fine.
There's been a couple come to and given me papers of what they exactly needed insurance coverage wise. And as soon as we found this and policy and it showed that they were covered, that they were good with it.
Let me give you an example to Councilmember Fillmore's point. Let's say we do have an accident that occurs in Farmington. We don't have an agreement in place saying that's Farmington's responsibility for the home that was destroyed, the lives that were lost, or whatever it might be that goes beyond the scope of the coverage in our insurance. It happens in Farmington. We don't have an agreement in place. So is that Farmington's responsibility, or do we have a 1/13th responsibility because we share that responsibility with all the other cities or the other entities? Those are the questions that are unknown that makes it uncomfortable for us to proceed without some sort of agreement, because that's just one example of many of what would become challenging. And then it goes to the finger pointing. Well, now there's money involved. Who's responsible? Who's going to pay for that? FOP Academy, Centreville City, your own city? We just don't know. And that's just one simple example of many.
See, to me, it would be obvious. It would be 1/13th of it. I mean, if we're all going in, we're all members of that insurance policy. If the insurance policy doesn't cover it, then you're going to go after everybody equally on that insurance policy. See, I just
the optimal word there is obvious. It's obvious, but it's not written.
But the insurer is going to tell you, yeah, they made, in our opinion, they were outside the scope of our insurance. They did something that in normal flight wouldn't have caused them to crash. Therefore, prove us wrong. And then, as the attorney for the victims of this, I'd be suing you all individually. And if I were Farmington, I'd say, I'm going to go back and make that Centreville's problem. When it comes to these sort of situations, I hate to say it, but every friendship has a monetary value. And I think the same would be true between government entities. If it gets exceeded, they're going to protect their own. They have to. That's their job. I would expect Lisa to do that for us. Farmington can hate me, but I need Lisa to protect Centreville.
Yeah, sure. That's why we're trying to hopefully get it covered through insurance.
But I'm hearing from Brent, maybe I'm hearing this wrong, the insurance is not specifically just the only issue there. If there's no agreement as to what their liability is beyond the insurance, if the insurance doesn't go, we get nailed as the sponsor of this event, and we have it on our shoulders as a city. And this is where it comes down to me. It's almost a binary thing. If nothing happens, Centreville's heroes. We did a great job. Everyone's very happy. If something happens, what do we tell our residents about the risk we took? Because I mean, it falls back on us. Let's just brass tacks. It comes back to us.
Well, I think all the cities are taking this risk because, yeah, sure, Bill and I put in a lot of time and the Curnows, but we have people that have put in tons of hours in advertising from other cities as well, too. There's been a committee member from every city that's been involved in this for the last month. So the organization has been happening from all cities, all at different levels with different assignments.
Okay, but that's Brant and Lisa's point, is that we can think that, but if we don't have it written in a document, then we can't assume that that would be the case. And so what I'm wondering is if what you're saying is true, that we do have these cities on board and that they have truly been partners in this, then do they have the mechanisms and ability in place to quickly sign a document, right? So before one tomorrow, can we not only have payments collected and an insurance policy in place, but some fairly simple document that Lisa gave that great effort, but it put it all on one sole entity, and that sole entity said no way. But if you truly have this partnership that you're talking about, then would those partners be willing to say, sure, we can do that? And to Brant's point, maybe it's more complicated because we're a political body and bureaucracies, and so it's the council that needs to decide that. So that would entail each city maybe emailing their council and saying, do you feel this is an administrative decision, or
Or do you want to?
are you available this morning for well, and then the meeting isn't noticed, so then they can't do it in this time frame.
From my understanding of the insurance and the reason that I've requested that Bountiful Flight indemnify the city or the county or all 13 of us, I think my advice would be the same, because they're the ones that can get the insurance. We've been told that we can't get special event insurance for this because we don't own the planes, we're not flying the planes. It's problematic to get insurance for something like this. So that's why we were asking them to get it. So if they're getting the insurance, I think all the entities are still going to want to say, well, then indemnify us.
I personally think I agree with that. And that was to my comparing it to the fireworks point, right? Is that the fireworks company that is licensed and that you're hiring should have the adequate insurance. But if we sweeten the pot to make it worth them to go to that trouble, and then they're the ones in charge of making sure that insurance covers them adequately, then that makes it so this can actually happen. And I'd be completely on board with that.
The problem is when you say sweeten the pot, if somebody's going to really risk the value of his company on a potential liability, sweetening the pot isn't a case of $5,000 or $10,000.
Well, but that's the point here, is that we're doing the same thing as cities then. So if we're saying that risk is too great for them to take, then why are we willing to take it?
If it stays as a sweetening of the pot, Bill, that seems like that's a much easier hurdle for us to get over with the cities, because that may be within the purchase authorities of the city managers to make that happen with an implied understanding or sampling of their councils and ratification later, or however they want to work that. I think that's much easier than trying to get all entities on board to hold a meeting, get something signed off. So the path forward looks like it has to be a sweetening of the pot to make it work. That's why I was only half joking about what's our telethon at, because if the other mayors have reached out and are listening to this and are hearing what our drama is, hopefully they're talking to their councils and saying, look, it's not $1,000 anymore, folks. It's 3, 5, pick a number, whatever that is, to make it equitable for Bountiful Flight. I mean, there's got to be that upside, but outside of moving the dollar number, I don't know how much we can control this beyond that, given the time frame. That would be the only thing that we've got. And I think Tammy's right. If they're not willing to do it,
why would
the city? Because that's outside the scope of what we're supposed to be doing for our residents.
And even if we were, it just gets into the logistical challenge of the way these organizations work. They can't do something overnight. We just can't.
I would argue that to some degree, this is not to a great degree, in fact, this is not outside of the responsibilities we have as cities to the citizens. County collected or is in the process of collecting $60 million in COVID funds. They are going to split those COVID funds with cities and businesses and so forth. You've got an economy and a mental environment going on that something positive is appropriate and very beneficial. Why did we do the 4th of July parade in the past? That's not the formal responsibility of what makes the city run. That's not sewer, that's not police, that's not water, that's not planning. It's an extra event, it's a party.
No, I apologize. I stated that incorrectly. I think we have a responsibility to our citizens, and that was the scope of the responsibility. I think that there is definitely merit in it. I wouldn't be trying to find a way to make it happen otherwise, but I'm just trying to figure out how we make it, the scope of responsibility is still shared. And the only way I see that is going with maybe a bigger dollar amount, getting Flight Academy back to the table and having them execute the agreement so that they can be the correct party for the insurance.
And my point is that isn't at all a philosophical debate about whether or not we should try to make this happen. That's what we're doing, is trying to make it happen. But logistically, I don't think it's possible for an agreement, a document, an interlocal, even no matter how simple it is, to be signed by all of the entities in the time frame.
Right.
One of the difficulties we've run into that I didn't know about, because we can notice a meeting and have it in 24 hours. Apparently, and it's just a difference in government regulation, the county notice on a meeting is 6 days. So this course of going down the road and choosing to try and use FLT to get it done was at least partly motivated by that, because there was no way the county could, once this all happened after our council meeting last week, provide this 6-day notice to be able to get it on their agenda and do something. So although the cities have the ability, if we could get to them fast enough tomorrow, and if they could work fast enough to make a decision to notice something, and let's just say do a meeting at noon Friday.
So I know this. I know that we have money that if FLT Academy will do this. I've had 2 mayors in the morning are ready to run checks over there. You know, and they're all ready to go, a couple thousand a piece. That'll be about enough to get that insurance in place, at least, Bill.
That, you know, I mean, I can call him back again tonight, tell him where we're going, and he's texted you. He hasn't texted me during the meeting.
I got a text when I got his number from you. I had somebody else call him, and I got a text from them.
Okay.
About texts in public meetings, I'm kind of recalling. Sorry, different conversation.
That was text.
Somebody else do it. So
that was text. No, George. That was text between us.
I'm not texting to any of you.
I'm just trying to lighten the mood. We're dealing with. I know you guys have put a lot of effort into this. We're trying to come up with a solution. So what I'm not clear on is what path are we trying to go to now. So if we're in agreement that something has to be done to try and put this together and make it happen, what exactly is it we're trying to get?
Well, I think what we've come up with is that the only possible thing is that we get FLT back to the table, and each city, and I guess my reaction, Mayor, would be to up the ante to 3, put the skydivers back in, up the ante to 3. That leaves FLT probably in the neighborhood of about a $15,000 profit, which is not much. Is that enough to sweeten the pot? I don't know. And then because everybody has put 3 into them directly, we don't have to have the indemnification agreement. If I remember the combination of Brant's and Lisa's comments together.
We still need the indemnification agreement, and because to Brant's point, because we don't have an interlocal agreement or a
But
signed
Brant
anything.
said that the indemnification is not doable, and he said it was possible, so I think we can get around it.
Yeah, I don't,
Ideally, it would be nice to have it.
they won't sign it, the Flight Academy won't sign an indemnification agreement.
At least not that one.
But that was when they were assuming that there was no upside, right? That they were getting
No, that's when they.
that they were getting marketing and they were doing a community service. And so my understanding in the conversation is that by sweetening the pot, saying we're hiring you as a licensed company and assuming that it's going to be all under you. And so we're indemnified because we're just hiring you.
But that's what they're not agreeing to.
That's what they won't do.
Yeah,
They
they're not
weren't
gonna
gonna
sign
do
that.
That was today.
It's not gonna happen. That's not gonna work if you think an indemnification agreement.
So I'll give the final, not necessarily the final, but the staff perspective on this. And that is, I hate to say it, without everything that ideally I've mentioned before, our recommendation is not to proceed as staff. That's our recommendation, not to proceed with everything that's going forward. But now you as an elected body can override that, make a decision. You're not doing anything illegal, unethical, but you as elected officials can go against our recommendation and do as you so choose. And if you would like to see this proceed, I'm telling you at a minimum of us to feel even slightly comfortable, that's what we need. But I'll tell you, we don't feel comfortable without all those items in place. We just don't. And that's, so we can't make a recommendation to proceed.
To be slightly comfortable, repeat again, what is it you do need at a minimum?
We need somebody else to invoice the 13 entities, whatever that cost is, $1,000, $3,000. Each entity needs to participate financially into that. We need another entity to pay those invoices, whatever that cost is.
What was the second
each one of those to pay those invoices. So before, the original idea was to have us collect the money and us pay the invoices. Not okay with that. That's us paying the bills. We're the contractor at that point.
We're not doing that.
Have FLC Academy or any other group be responsible for making payment. Listing all the 13 cities as the additional insured. And finally, we need to have an opportunity to review what that additional insured or co-insured means and if we're actually protected or if we're just a name only. So we're going to be named in the lawsuit if something bad goes and we're just there. Because generally there's a cost to be additional insured. And anyway, so we need to make sure we are fully aware of what we're being covered for, that we could submit to Dave Peterson with IRMA. And I would dare say that Steve Hansen with the Utah Local Governments Trust, who represents a number of other cities, as well as Olympus, they need an opportunity to review whatever that is.
It would clearly be wise at this point, if we're sending something to Dave Peterson for opinion, that we send it to all three.
I agree.
Because it'll just shorten the time frame.
Correct. And that's kind of what the anticipation was in the beginning. The thought was, for just information for the council, was we would be additionally insured on each one of these entities. So you talked about Skydive Ogden, name each city as additional insured. Well, there was a pretty significant cost to add each city as additional insured, and each one of the 3 insurance providers for our 12 cities wanted to have a chance to review each one of those. That's just an undertaking that would have been really challenging. So having this other insurance is promising, where you have one that could list all 12 or 13 cities, but we need to understand what our coverage is in.
I think, Brant, thinking about it, I am not positive, but I believe that the differential between the fact that getting everybody listed on the FLT policy as opposed to getting everybody listed on the skydivers policy, which was 2 separate policies, the skydivers are hitting 12 unique locations and therefore had the charge for it. There are no locations on the other. In other words, there's not going to be any place where any of us can interact with the planes. And I think that is the difference, but I can check, I can call the insurance broker in the morning. Actually, I could probably call him tonight because he did give me his cell number.
So, okay, Mayor, you made a statement of that they will not come back to the table for that indemnification.
No, he said-
Even at 15,000, they won't come, 15,000 potential profit, they wouldn't come back. I saw Tammy kind of leap up at the same point when it was, at least it appeared to me that if there's not a number that brings them back to the table for the risk, that's concerning.
Okay, so we can meet what Brant said. We can have someone else invoice. We can make, what was the second thing, Brant?
Everybody paying their own invoice.
Everybody paying their own invoice. We could get insurance in place and get Irma to review that. That was it, wasn't it?
Well, I think one thing he said was that each city would pay FLT and then FLT would pay the bills.
Yes, yes.
And so,
somebody
for
else-
instance, when you're saying these mayors would be willing to front first the insurance money, since that's the first deadline, they would need to pay it to FLT and have FLT pay it.
Correct. And I told Brad since 3-4 weeks ago that I was staying away from the city doing any invoicing after we initially decided we weren't going to do that when we got the county that committed to do it. So yes, those things can take place. Cross our fingers.
So George, would you feel comfortable with that? Because you were in the middle of saying, it sounded like that you would expect if the company was making a profit that they would be taking the liability, and so they should be willing to sign the indemnification.
That's the part that's concerning to me is that, folks, I'm going to lay out one more path, okay? And I'm not trying to change your minds because everyone wants this to go forward. I just want you to realize that under the way we're doing it, we are still the organizer sponsor. We're asking a third party to pick up insurance without an agreement as to what that means. If something goes wrong, if I'm the attorney on the other side, I'm also going to point out that your current city manager who advised you not to do it was a former airport manager. I mean, it's just, the story is so fantastic on the other side. I just wish there were a way for us as a political body to work with the other political bodies to divide this up, because if $15,000 for an hour's worth of flight time is not enough profit for me to take out the insurance risk and to do an indemnification, what do they know that we don't know? Why is that not an acceptable amount of profit potentially for the amount of time? That's where I'm having a hard time, because I could pick a number. I could say, hey, as a council, let's go $5,000 per council. $50,000 an hour. Is that enough for them to take on the liability? To me, the number between 1 and 5,000, it's less than we pay on fireworks. But if there's a number between 1 and 5,000 that gets me out of potentially losing millions of dollars when the insurance company says it's not their problem, I'd rather pay it up front to Bountiful, to the Flight Academy. To me, that's the safer way to go.
I guess, George, that the issue is, let me put it this way. You're, I don't know, 50 years old, 52 years old, 55 years old.
Go lower.
You've worked for the last 25 years. You're looking at a retirement. You've got a home. How much profit do you need to take from this transaction to risk your personal net worth?
Well, if I believe it's going to be a safe activity and it's only going to last 1 hour and I don't anticipate anything happening, $15,000 an hour is pretty good profit for writing paper. That's where I'm at.
And if I have a good relationship with the insurer, right? And that was something that got said, is that this is their primary insurer. This is what they do. They do a risky activity and they have insurance for it. And then this is just additional insurance for this specific activity. So it's not out of the realm of the risk they already take on, right?
Because they have
that is true, with the limitation that nobody, that this is, at least to some degree, novel. Nobody's done an air parade like what I dreamed up.
So I would actually be more inclined to say, let's pick a number that is a do not exceed number. And if we can negotiate that, and the other mayors can negotiate that into what that number is, that they feel comfortable with the risk, pay more money, but get us out of the risk. I mean, what's our fireworks budget? 10 grand?
Reduced,
Six.
yeah, it's reduced around 5 to 8,000 this year.
Okay, so I mean, to me, I'd say fine. You, from a council perspective, go all the way up to 7. See what the other mayors will match. Get them to sign the agreement.
What would you guess the mayors would match, Clark?
I don't think enough of them do 4th of July celebrations where they'd go up to $7,000. I just don't think that's going to happen. They're all saying they'll go up to 2. We could probably get them to 3, but I don't know that.
Do you think we'd get them to 4?
I think only 3 or 4 cities would you get there, because some of the cities being smaller, they just don't have as big a budget for it.
And maybe that's okay, Mayor. Maybe that's just, I mean, to me, I'm saying if we just walked away and said our budget is, our max offer is equal to whatever our fireworks budget is, and if you can get the same kind of commitment, I mean, that's when you're into the horse trading with Bountiful on it as to what they need to make it happen and make it risk-free for them. I mean, that's probably, I'm totally fine with that. That, to me, if we walk away with something like that, then we're not in the sponsorship business.
So Mayor, do you think if we go back, so let's say that we're going for 3, that's 36. Do you think if we go back with this approach to the county, we can get them back in participating? Now we're at 15 plus 36, you're at 50 grand. We got hard costs of about 20. So they got a $30,000 profit. Now you're starting to get sufficient that I think maybe he would sign it. I have some borderline inside information that he's been hurt seriously by everything that's happened in the COVID scare. He's not done individual flight instruction in the past 3 years, but he's reopened individual flight instruction starting, I believe it was the 1st of May, because he's trying to keep his planes busy and make money. So $30,000 might be enough to get him to sign that agreement. That's.
Now, Bill, with as slow as the county has to work,
County already had a check.
They did?
But county had a check ready to go today if I'd walked in with a signed agreement. Now, did they tear it up? I don't know. I would guess they haven't torn it up yet. And if we could come back with an agreement tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, it would be available.
Yeah, I think the county,
I'm good with that.
as long as you have that agreement signed, they'll write.
Pardon? Yeah, you're right. I mean, the only way you're going to get the county is if we get the agreement, and if we give them enough profit, will they sign the agreement? I don't know.
I don't know either. Based on what you were saying today, Bill, sounds like they really didn't want to sign the indemnity.
No, they really don't want to sign the agreement, but that was when they had no profit. If I'm offering them 30 grand, is that a different story?
See, and that's something I can get behind. I can seriously get behind saying, yeah, go all the way up to the fireworks budget on our negotiation. Other mayors will have to do what they're going to do. But if it comes up with a number that gets them to sign and takes us out of the risk pool and transfers that, it's totally worth any number between 0 and the end of the fireworks budget to do that. It is not worth to me personally to have the liability associated with Centreville specifically. So let's see if I mean, that to me seems seems like good business for them. That's some really good money for papering up an event that's of that duration and that level of safety.
I'd second that motion.
I guess I should make it as a motion, shouldn't I? I motion that we authorize the mayor and the city manager to negotiate pricing up to the current budget for fireworks for fiscal 21 as a means of incentivizing Bountiful Flight Academy to accept the indemnification agreement as written.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Is that an opposed or an aye for the other side?
It was an aye. I will do my damnedest.
Well, we got to get the other mayors to jazz up their councils about it's going to cost a little bit more, but everyone's going to be having a great time with it.
I think that they'll get a lot of push from the citizens because they're really excited about it. We're going to have a lot of backlash if this doesn't happen.
I also wonder if, you know, the main concern of the county was the lack of the indemnification. And if that's back on the table, then the amount of money available from the county
Might be increased.
back up to, no, even higher, possibly back up
That's
to
why I say be increased.
increased. Yeah, I thought you said back to 3, but yes.
No, be increased.
Yeah.
They should be able to use some COVID money for this.
Because the county was excited about it, and the hesitation was, well, if we're hosting it, then we're taking on all the liability. And so if we solve that problem, then they go back to being excited about the tourism benefits and willing to pay some money for that.
And he can't feel, as you know, he stepped up as a corporate citizen and can't feel abused if there's going to be a healthy profit margin. Hopefully that's a number that we can reach between all of the entities as far as up in the ante a little bit. And maybe the county, if there are some shortfalls for the smaller cities, can pick that up. I mean, we're putting in a pretty significant commitment when you look at where we're at. So I'm hoping the other cities do the same. Like Robin says, if their citizens get aware that they went cheap when they had money available to do this, they're not going to be happy.
So do we need a motion to allow the mayor to sign the agreement? If that becomes a thing?
That was our original purpose, so probably we probably would need that, wouldn't we, Lisa?
I would make that motion.
A second. Or Bill, you seconded it. You're the sponsor.
I seconded it. Thank you, Stephanie. I'm just thinking about my day tomorrow. I'm going to get into my other work done again.
Yeah, I think both Bill and I have done about 2 hours of client work this week. So we have a motion.
I think you should both take a ride in one of those planes. You know, there should be a kicker in there for all the work that you've done.
Yeah, the question is do I want to go ride in the plane or do I want to sit on the ground with my grandkids and watch?
I can answer that one.
And the answer is?
I think your grandkids win. I've seen you in the parade with your grandkids. I think.
So we have a motion and a second for myself as mayor to sign the agreement if all parties are willing to sign it. So is that correct?
Yep, so, and I would say don't be the last one to sign it either.
So the agreement has a dollar amount in it though, doesn't it?
Yeah, there was dollar amounts in it.
Yeah, the agreement had a dollar amount in it. That would have to be modified.
Yeah, you might want to motion that they're allowed to
up to the ambiguous number that George put in the previous.
But the ambiguous number that's the total.
The fireworks agreement.
Yeah, it's the problem is the total amount.
The agreement is between Centreville, the county, and the flight. And what you guys want is everybody involved. So
right.
Is not It's not.
Right, but once we get that agreement with the county, we can go back to the strength of the other one that Brant has with FLT invoicing every entity. They've already invoiced the county to $15,000. Each of the entities making the payment to FLT. Now, they don't all have the agreement with FLT, but you've got the indemnification.
The written agreement doesn't say any of that. The written agreement says that Centreville and Davis County will pay FLT, and FLT will indemnify the county and the city. Now, I'm fine if you want to add a lot of others, but you know, that's the agreement. Yeah. It's sort of Brant saying, get everybody else involved, but everybody else isn't a party to that agreement. So you're going to have to say, okay, fine, we'll sign that agreement. I mean, you're still collecting the money from everybody, but.
No, we aren't.
Okay.
FLT is.
Yeah, we're not collecting money. FLT is.
But the problem is because we have a dollar amount, we are the only party that's transacting money, us in the county, right?
I guess we could change it and just say they'll be paid by a lot of different people.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
It doesn't make any sense.
They could say something.
But I like it.
FLT is invoicing other cities, you know, the 12th, I don't know.
Okay.
Lisa, how do you phrase that?
Agreement who shall be named as insured.
Okay, so you got it all figured out, Lisa. I knew you could do it.
So I guess the question would be is if we had to keep it simple to at least the extent of the insurance. The problem is, Bill, you're still dealing with a handshake though, because it's not going to be papered up to the amount inside the indemnification agreement. It's only going to be what we agree to and what the county agrees to. So there's still some good faith in it, right?
Well, you could just say we're not going to pay it till you get how many cities are going to pay you. But I mean, I can either just revise that paragraph and say, I mean, whatever dollar amount you want, we can put in there.
And can't you add all the other cities?
Well, they're not going to be parties to the agreement 2 days before. I just don't think it's realistic. So yeah,
The mechanics of doing that is not reasonable.
We'll just say FLT to bill the following entities.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't add, in my opinion, it doesn't add that legal layer of, you know, getting the city out of it and splitting it 13 ways. But I actually think it's better to have this agreement, and maybe you up
Nothing
to 8 million, and then Centreville collects it. I mean, I was okay with that yesterday. I'm still okay with that.
awesome.
You know, and if you want to try and get more money from other cities, but the only way to get the other cities on the hook is to either have them sign this agreement or to do it by a handshake where everybody just gets billed separately. But personally, I would recommend that you have this agreement because it makes it very clear that we're indemnified and who's paying the insurance. But I think that at this point, those are your two options.
So the insurance as it's quoted right now had the county as the insured and FLT Academy and the 12 cities and Davis School District is co-insured.
Well,
So,
the agreement just says that they're going to name Davis County and Centreville City as additional insured.
or additional insured, yeah. So I guess my question, Bill, and were you going to change? Is FLT going to be the main insured, and all the other entities additional insured?
The insurance company did not want to do it that way because the name of the program is the Davis County Independence Day Air Parade. They felt that Davis County needed to be the lead name. And they felt pretty strong about that.
Sense.
But if we get that indemnification agreement signed, if we hit a dollar amount that causes them to execute that, if the only thing we're changing is the dollar amount and the rest of the terms stay the same, then the county, as far as I understand from what I've heard so far from you, the county was okay with that as it was.
Yeah.
That's correct.
We'll
So
with that. I mean,
then I think we're still at the same point, Lisa. If we can get the dollar amount to match, if there's a tipping point where they'll sign it, then the hurdle is we have to pencil in what that dollar amount is, or say that, you know, the Centreville is this portion and other portions will be coming from other entities, whatever that is.
and so what's the dollar amount we think we're gonna hit?
Brant, what's the maximum of our fireworks budget that we were going to burn up in a literal sense? Because that was the number I was motioning against.
It's very
I think the
dark
number's
in my
$50,000.
office.
I think the number's $50,000, which is 15 from the county, approximately 3 from each city.
Okay. And if they
So
flake
we're
out, we're
willing to
flying
go
around
up.
it.
Okay, I'll work on the Bears. Tell them work on getting more money because to make it attractive to FLT Academy.
Lisa, do you need to redo the agreement, or can we manually change the $23,000 to the updated number and then get people to initial it?
I can revise it, but I mean, it just depends. I don't know how you say the county's gonna pay 15, Centreville's gonna pay. I mean, right now we have in there, we're gonna pay 8. So we drop ours down to 5 and then say others, or, you know, the following will pay 3.
Well, the county ignored your 8 and was there and made the check for 15. So,
Well, yeah.
so the whole thing of the split payment, the county ignored it. They made it for 8, or they made it for 15.
Okay, but that was their commitment. So yeah, I don't know if you want just to say the county will pay 15 and then all these other entities are gonna pay this. And all these other entities should be named on the insurance.
But what I would do for tonight is I would just motion that we're turning this over to the mayor and Brant to work out tomorrow within the scope of this discussion that we've had. Because I don't think we need to solve these questions now. I think the mayor and Bill are going to be getting on the phone, and then we'll have more information mid-morning tomorrow, and then they talk to you to work out the edits.
That works for me.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable. I mean, obviously with the amendment, we would try and add the upward limit of the parameter, but on cost, but we don't know what that is. And that might hit a point. This is almost where we're tipping our hand way too much. Now they're starting to figure out what that number is. I don't know. That's a negotiation point.
I think I'd suggest the easiest way to do it is not to identify the individual invoices, but to just stop paragraph number 2 after at the end of the first sentence. The sponsor shall pay the sum of $50,000. That's rounding it down 1 to the organizer for organizing and putting on the air parade, and not go into the details of the timing.
But I would be willing to, I'd be willing to hold off on what that number is while you and the mayor are negotiating with the other cities.
Yeah.
I don't want that 50,000 to be a number that we fall just short of, and that to hold up the whole thing because the motion said 50,000.
And I think the county's gonna want a line item number for their commitment. They're not gonna be willing to have an open check, because if you put 50,000, we're both.
I actually disagree. If we can get him to sign the agreement, and then let's just say that 8 of the 12 cities agree to 3, and 4 of the 12 cities will only go 2. So now what you've got is the county doing 15 plus 24 plus, so they're at 39 plus 6, you're at 45. The county would like to see it happen. I think the county would come in for an additional 5. Don't you, Clark, if they've got a signed agreement?
Well, I think they would if they had a signed agreement, yeah. I think they would.
I'll just send out a revised one with 50,000 and no details on payment as Bill suggested.
I think that gives us more to work with.
It
Right.
definitely
We need
flattens
to
out.
approve 2 versions of it so that it's workable either way.
The expensive one and the not so expensive one. No, I think the 50,000 is that's a good number to work from as an easy point. But I don't think there's anyone here who would be opposed necessarily if they're, like you say, if that turns into 51,000, does it need to come back to the council? I don't think so. It's within the level of tolerance. This is where we're going to have to say that we agree as a body that the mayor and the city manager are going to be negotiating in good faith on behalf of the city within what we would consider reasonable parameters. If it suddenly turns into a $1.2 million contract, we have a problem. But I'm thinking within 50, 60,000, whatever that number is, it's within a tolerance value I wouldn't get overly concerned about.
Yeah,
Because we've already put the parameter on it that it's up to our fireworks budget, so we know what our commitment has to be.
yeah, we've made that motion, and whether or not this agreement even needs to be approved by the council, and I could be wrong, Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a judgment call, right?
Well, I
Or
think
is it by ordinance that we have to be clear about what we're approving you to do?
risk and emergency funds, so Brant and I are recommending it be approved by the council, but I think you've made that motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've made that motion. So I got some calls that I need to start making. Bill, I would say that the first thing we need to do is get an
Let's
insurance
vote on it.
insurance payment made tomorrow. It's all going to be dead. I mean, even if, we might have to take the risk, we make that insurance payment and everything's going to work out later on in the day or the next day.
But
we
first
still
we need
have
to vote.
We still have that second motion on the table, Mayor.
Yeah, rephrase the motion for me, please, somebody.
I don't have the agreement up in front of me because I'm looking at this. I move that we authorize the mayor to execute the indemnification agreement with the change of the number. George, help me out. I can't remember what
as Bill stated, Bill's got a pretty good idea of it. Maybe we just have him re-motion it with how.
Sure, I'll do it.
Yep.
Make a motion that we modify the contract as presented such that we pay $50,000 to FLT to become the organizer of the event without specifying the exact contributions by the county and each individual city.
Second.
Yeah, I got a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Is that 5 ayes opposed?
I think so.
Okay, that's unanimous. All right.
Thanks,
Okay.
Bill, Mayor, for all the
Thank
time
you both.
this.
Get to work. Let's entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Good luck, you guys.
Aye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Can we send you sugar to keep you awake tonight?
Yeah.
I think
I'm